The facility was silent, save for the humming of sterile machinery. The Virellans had perfected the art of quiet, an oppressive stillness that only emphasized their superiority. In the darkened labs, shadows stretched like creatures waiting to strike. Cale Ryther sat shackled to a cold, metal chair, his wrist chafed, his face bruised. He didn't care. The pain was nothing. The real ache was somewhere deeper, a wound too raw to touch. He'd failed. Again. "Lift him," came a calm, emotionless voice. A sharp, metallic tone, the kind that belonged to something other than a living being. Cale didn't flinch, didn't look up as the Virellan scientist strapped him to the examination table. His eyes flickered to the side, catching a glimpse of the cold cryochamber in the corner of the room. There, a slab of ice held the dead remnants of a human body, a relic from a colony long forgotten. The Virellans had recovered it weeks ago. They had been trying to resurrect it, to pull whatever secrets they could from its frozen form. But Cale knew better. They didn't realize the truth. The truth about humanity. The room was filled with the quiet, methodical clicks of Virellan engineers. Their forms floated like specters, their elongated limbs moving gracefully through the zero-gravity chamber. They didn't understand. They never did. But they would. Cale would make sure of that. A Virellan scientist in a white lab suit approached, his face obscured by a glass helmet. "We've unlocked the genetic key," he announced, his voice calm, indifferent. "It's only a matter of time before we fully decode it." Cale gritted his teeth. He didn't have the luxury of time. The last few weeks, he had learned what they were after, a dormant combat protocol encoded into every strand of human DNA, lying in wait like a predator. A weapon humanity didn't even know it carried. A weapon that could tear the galaxy apart. A low, mechanical hum pierced the air as a terminal lit up on the far wall. The screen flickered, showing a series of alien symbols, incomprehensible to most. But Cale, trained in every aspect of human and alien bioengineering, understood it perfectly. The codes, the sequences, they were unlocking something. Something dangerous. Something human. "You think we're just animals, don't you?" Cale muttered, his voice thick with defiance. "You think you can break us?" The Virellan scientist didn't respond. He simply gestured for another researcher to activate the chamber. Cale's heartbeat quickened. They didn't know what they were dealing with. He did. The cryochamber door slid open with a hiss, and the body of the human specimen inside was revealed. It was pale and shriveled, but Cale could see the signs, the faint pulse beneath the skin, the slight twitch of the fingers. The protocol was active. "Activate the core," the scientist ordered. Cale's eyes narrowed. He knew what came next. The core was a device embedded within the human body, a small nanotech mechanism designed to trigger the combat protocol in times of extreme duress. And once it was activated, there would be no stopping it. It would run its course, transforming the human into a weapon, driven by instinct, ferocity, and a mindless rage. Cale had seen it happen before. His own flesh-and-blood failure. Juno. Suddenly, the room trembled as the core fired up. The human corpse began to twitch, its muscles spasming violently. The body's eyes shot open, glowing a dull, eerie red. Cale's breath hitched. He knew that look. The dead man was alive again. But not in the way they imagined. Cale's mind raced. The Virellans thought they had control. But they didn't. None of them did. The human figure on the slab began to convulse, jerking like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. And then, with horrifying precision, the body shot up from the table, claws slashing through the air. The first strike hit the closest Virellan researcher, sending him flying against the far wall, his form crumpling to the floor. The protocol had been awakened. And now, there was no turning back. Cale's eyes locked onto the chaos unfolding before him. The human was no longer a person, it was a weapon, a living embodiment of humanity's darkest potential. Rage was its only function, its singular purpose. The laboratory was no longer a sterile place of knowledge. It had become a battlefield. The Virellans, for all their scientific advancements, were no match for it. Kale's hands clenched into fists, his thoughts spiraling. He had to act. He had to stop this before it spread, before the galaxy learned what humanity was truly capable of. He was the only one who understood what had been triggered. The Virellans, the other humans, they were all pawns. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. With a surge of effort, Kale's restraint snapped. He had spent years training for moments like this, and despite the failure at New Thessaly, his instincts kicked in. He leaped from the table, his combat exosuit flickering to life. The protocol had been triggered in him as well, the dormant genes that made him something more. One of the Virellans noticed his movement and shouted in alarm. But it was too late. Kale was already on the move. "Get out of the way," he growled, his voice thick with urgency. His hands shot out, grabbing the nearest Virellan scientist by the collar, yanking him aside. He barely noticed the scientist's screams as Kale ran toward the exit. The human in the chamber continued to thrash, ripping through the walls with inhuman strength. Kale could see the Virellans panicking, retreating. But the humans weren't retreating. And Kale? Kale knew that no matter how hard he tried, it wouldn't be enough to stop what had already begun. With his heart pounding, he dashed toward the door, determined to do whatever it took to find a way out of this. But as he stepped into the dark corridor, his eyes flashed red. And for the first time since the war, Kale Rytha felt it. The protocol was alive in him. The worst part? It wasn't a fight anymore. It was a hunt. The hallways of the Virellan facility stretched like veins through the heart of an alien body, illuminated by the cold glow of artificial lights. Kale moved swiftly, his exosuit humming with power, his senses sharper than they had ever been. The protocol was alive within him, thrumming beneath his skin, and the raw power it unleashed was intoxicating. But he fought it. For now. He kept his mind focused, his breath steady, trying not to give in to the animalistic urges crawling through his veins. The Virellans had triggered something in him, something buried deep inside every human DNA strand. The combat protocol wasn't just a weapon. It was instinct. And it was dangerous. "Kale!" A voice rang out from the darkness, sharp and urgent. He spun around, his hand instinctively going to the plasma knife at his belt. The voice came again, and this time, it was familiar. Juno. She stepped from the shadows, her once bright eyes now clouded with something darker, more primal. Her face was gaunt, her clothes tattered, but it was the way she moved that made Kale freeze. She moved with the fluidity of a predator, every step measured, every glance calculating. She was no longer the Juno he knew. "What did they do to you?" Kale's voice was low, rough. He wanted to reach out, to shake her, to find the friend he had lost, but there was nothing left of that person. Juno's eyes flickered, a brief flash of recognition, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "They awakened us," she whispered, her voice like a soft growl. "The protocol, Kale. It's in us, all of us now." He could see the faint tremor in her hands, but it wasn't fear. It was the strain of holding back the beast inside. The Virellans had known what they were doing when they activated the protocol. They hadn't just unleashed rage, they had unleashed humanity's hidden potential. The Virellans had thought they were studying us, learning how to control us, but instead, they had become our prey. "They're all dead," Juno continued, her voice cold, empty. "The others. The scientists. The Virellans. They didn't stand a chance." Kale's heart clenched. His eyes flickered to the hallway behind them, to the devastation they had left in their wake. The sound of a body slamming into the walls echoed in the distance, a loud, hollow thud. Another Virellan scientist. "How far do we go?" Kale asked, his mind calculating. They needed to leave. They needed to stop the others before the Virellans could launch their full assault. Juno's lips curled into a smile that sent a chill down Kale's spine. It wasn't a smile of victory, it was something far darker, more unsettling. "There's no going back now. We've all been changed." "I can stop this," Kale said, his voice firm. "I can contain it. There's a failsafe. I know how to stop it." Juno shook her head slowly. There's no stopping it. Not now. The protocol is embedded in every cell, Kale. It's in you, in me, in all of us. It's who we are now. Kale's mind raced. He couldn't accept that. He couldn't believe that this was the end of humanity, that the very essence of who they were was just a tool for destruction. He had seen the worst of humanity in the wars. But this wasn't them. This wasn't who they were meant to be. I have to try, he whispered, almost to himself. Juno stepped closer, her eyes narrowing, studying him like a predator studying prey. You're a fool if you think you can stop it. You're already a part of it, Kale. You can feel it, can't you? She reached out, brushing a hand against his arm, and Kale felt a jolt of energy shoot through him, a flicker of the protocol coursing through his veins. It was there again, that burning desire to fight, to kill, to destroy. He swallowed hard, pushing it down. Stay out of my head, he snapped, stepping back. I will stop it. Juno didn't reply. She just watched him, her eyes cold and calculating. For a moment, it felt like they were on opposite sides of a battlefield that had never existed until now. They had once been friends, allies. But now, they were enemies of a different kind. The screeching of metal echoed down the hall. Another Varellan. Another wave of them was coming. Kale could hear their voices, sharp, alien, panicked. They were scrambling to recover the data, to prevent whatever it was Kale and Juno had become. They were trying to contain them. But it was too late. Juno smiled again, her teeth sharp. They're coming, Kale. And this time, we fight back. Kale's chest tightened. He didn't want this. He didn't want to become a monster. But he knew Juno was right. The Varellans had awakened something in him, something buried so deep he hadn't even known it was there. And now, it was awake, and it wasn't going back to sleep. The first Varellan appeared in the hallway, their form illuminated by the flickering lights. They raised their weapons, and Kale's instincts kicked in. Before he could even think, his body moved, faster than he could comprehend. His hand shot out, grabbing the Varellan's weapon, twisting it out of its grip. He was on them before they could react, his combat reflexes taking over. The Varellan didn't even have time to scream before Kale slammed his fist into its chest, cracking its ribs. The creature crumpled to the floor, gasping for breath. Juno stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with hunger. It's just the beginning, Kale. Kale turned to her, his heart pounding. His mind screamed for him to stop, to pull back. But the protocol was too strong now. It was all-consuming. And there was nothing he could do but embrace it. We're all monsters now, Kale whispered, his voice hollow. The silence in the corridor was deafening. Only the sound of Kale's breath echoed in the narrow passage, amplified by the exosuit that clung to his body like a second skin. His hands trembled slightly, but it wasn't from fear. It was the pulse of the combat protocol. He could feel it thrumming through his veins, stirring beneath the surface, a constant reminder that this wasn't just a fight anymore. This was something far worse. Juno walked ahead of him, her movements smooth, calculated. She no longer appeared human, not in the way Kale remembered her. There was no warmth in her eyes, just cold, ruthless precision. The kind of predator that had been awakened in every one of them. She had embraced it, let it consume her. Kale couldn't help but think of what they'd once shared, their friendship, the long hours spent training, preparing for missions that never came. They'd been soldiers. But now, soldiers with a purpose they never chose, and a bloodlust they never wanted. Do you ever wonder if we can go back? Kale asked quietly, his voice strained. Juno glanced back at him, a brief flicker of something, maybe pity, crossing her face. It vanished as quickly as it came. You can't go back, Kale. Not after this. The protocol doesn't let you. He wanted to argue, to tell her that he could still fight it, but he didn't have the words. What could he say? That he would try to contain it? That there was still something of the man he used to be? It sounded hollow even in his own mind. The truth was, the protocol was winning, and there was no getting rid of it. It was who he was now. It was who they all were. A sudden screech broke through the silence. Cale's head snapped up, and his instincts kicked in. The sound of heavy boots echoed from behind, accompanied by the unmistakable hum of Virellan weapons powering up. "They're here," Juno whispered, a twisted smile playing on her lips. Before Cale could respond, a Virellan soldier rounded the corner, his weapon raised. Cale moved before the soldier could even react, his hand grasping the Virellan's throat, slamming it against the wall. The soldier struggled, but Cale's grip was unrelenting. His vision blurred with the protocol's call for violence, his muscles tightening as the urge to destroy surged within him. "Cale," Juno said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "You're slipping." He didn't reply. He couldn't. The soldier's face went pale, gasping for air. Cale's pulse pounded in his ears. It would be so easy to end it. To snap the Virellan's neck. But there was a flicker of hesitation, a brief moment of clarity. He slammed the soldier to the ground and stepped back, chest heaving. The Virellan gasped for breath, his weapon lying discarded on the floor. Juno stepped forward, tilting her head as she observed the scene. "You're weaker than I thought. You hesitate. I don't want to become like you," Cale growled, his voice thick with anger. "A weapon without a soul." "Ha!" Juno laughed, low and dark. "You think you're any different? We're all the same now. The protocol doesn't leave room for souls. Only survival. Only winning." Cale's mind raced. He could feel the pull of the protocol, stronger now, more insistent. He could almost hear it in his mind, urging him to finish what he started. It wasn't a choice anymore. It was a need. But then, something snapped inside him. His grip on reality tightened, just enough to force the protocol back. The Virellan soldier scrambled to his feet, his eyes wide with terror. He backed away, weapon raised once again, but this time Cale didn't move. He couldn't. Not anymore. "Go," Cale said, his voice low, cold. "Before I change my mind." The Virellan soldier hesitated, clearly unsure, but then, seeing the conflict in Cale's eyes, he turned and fled. Cale stood there, panting, his heart hammering in his chest. His hand was still clenched into a fist, his muscles tight with the urge to follow through. It would have been so easy. "Look at you!" Juno's voice was venomous, her words slicing through the tension. "Weak." "I'm not weak," Cale snapped. "I'm still human." "You're a fool." Juno stepped closer, her eyes narrowing with cold fury. "This isn't humanity. This is evolution. This is what we were always meant to be. Not the peaceful, weak creatures you cling to in your memories." Her words stung, but Cale refused to let her see it. "This is not evolution," he said, his voice steady. "This is a curse." Juno's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "A curse you're already succumbing to. A curse you want." The truth of her words hit him harder than any blow could. The protocol had taken hold of him, of them all. It was inescapable, and deep down, he knew it. The question wasn't whether he could fight it, it was whether he could survive what it made him. A sudden explosion shook the facility, the walls groaning as something large collided with them. Cale's heart skipped a beat. The Virellans had activated their backup security system, cannon fire from the outer perimeter. They were trying to destroy the facility, to wipe it all clean. "They're going to blow it all up," Cale muttered, his eyes wide with realization. "They'll destroy everything. They'll destroy us too," Juno replied, her tone flat. "But it doesn't matter. The protocol has already spread. It's not just us anymore. It's everyone." Cale looked at her, her eyes burning with a cold fire. He couldn't help but wonder if she was right. Had they already crossed the line? Was there any coming back? "There's still time," he said, his voice rising. "We can stop this. We can fight back." Juno turned away, her face unreadable. "It's too late for that, Cale. We've already won." The walls trembled again, and this time, the ceiling above them cracked, sending a cascade of debris to the floor. Cale's exosuit hummed, alerting him to the danger. It was happening. The Virelans were going to destroy everything. The countdown had begun. Cale's thoughts raced, his options limited. He could try to stop them. He could fight back, like he had always done. But deep inside, he knew there was no turning back. The protocol was in him, in Juno, in every human now. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The walls of the Virelan facility groaned under the strain, cracks spiderwebbing across the ceilings as the countdown to detonation echoed through the hallways. The floor trembled beneath Cale's boots, a constant reminder that time was running out. The facility was about to implode, a final attempt by the Virelans to erase everything. To erase them. Cale could feel the weight of the protocol pressing on him. His senses were heightened, every sound, every movement amplified. It was all he could do to keep his mind focused, to fight the impulse to let the rage consume him. Cale. Juno's voice cut through the tension, low and venomous. She stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with something dangerous. You're still holding on to that hope. It's pathetic. He turned to face her, his jaw tight. I'm not like you. I won't let this protocol take everything from me. Juno's lips curled into a smile, but there was no humor in it. You think you can stop it? You think you can control it? The protocol is already in your blood. You're a weapon now, Cale. Just like me. Just like all of us. Cale's heart raced, but he held his ground. He couldn't afford to let her words take root. She had fallen. She had embraced what the Virelans had awakened in them, but he hadn't. Not yet. You're wrong, he said, his voice steady. I'm still human. And I'm not going to let this be the end of us. Juno's expression faltered for a fraction of a second, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. But it was gone before Cale could register it. She stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on the hilt of the plasma blade at her waist. There's no stopping it, Cale. It's already too late. Suddenly, the facility shook again, more violently this time. The explosion was closer. Cale's exosuit whined, alerting him to structural failure. The outer walls were collapsing, and the countdown was nearing its final moments. The facility was about to be obliterated. Move! Cale shouted, grabbing Juno by the arm and pulling her toward the exit. We need to get out of here. Now! She resisted at first, but then, with a soft growl, she allowed herself to be pulled along. There was a brief moment of hesitation in her eyes, but it was fleeting. She was still fighting the protocol too, even if she refused to admit it. The hallway ahead was a mess of debris and smoke, the faint hum of Virelan weaponry still audible in the distance. The countdown was almost at 0. Don't you understand? Juno said as they ran. There's no escape. We can't outrun this. The galaxy will never forget what we've become. Cale didn't reply. He couldn't. Her words were the truth. The galaxy would remember them. And humanity's role in it all. The legacy of the protocol would be their legacy. There was no avoiding it. They rounded the corner, and Cale spotted the emergency exit, a hatch that led to the surface of the station. It was their only chance. But the moment they reached it, the doors slid shut with a mechanical hiss, blocking their path. No! Cale slammed his fist against the control panel, but it didn't respond. The facility was locking down. It was trying to contain them, to make sure the detonation went through. Juno stepped forward, her eyes narrowing in concentration. Let me try. She moved swiftly, her fingers dancing over the control panel, activating the emergency override. But before she could complete it, a voice came through the intercom, cold, emotionless, unmistakable. You think you can escape? Reljuin's voice echoed through the facility. There's no escape from what you've become. The protocol is in you. It always was. And now you will burn with this station. Cale clenched his fists, his body tense with fury. You're wrong, he growled. You never understood us. You never understood what we are. But you will. He turned to Juno. Override it. Now. With a sharp nod, she pressed the final key. The hatch above them opened with a heavy hiss, and a blast of cold air rushed into the corridor. Cale didn't wait. He bolted for the exit, Juno close behind. The surface of the station was nothing like the sterile, metallic corridors they had just left. The stars above were clear, distant, and endless. But there was no time to admire them. The station was already starting to break apart, pieces of debris floating past them in the vacuum of space. "Cale!" Juno shouted, pointing toward the horizon. "There's no time! We need to!" But before she could finish, the station trembled again, more violently this time. The outer walls buckled, and a massive explosion ripped through the structure, sending a shockwave that blasted them both off their feet. Cale barely had time to react as debris flew around them, but instinct took over. He reached out, grabbing Juno's arm and pulling her toward a nearby escape pod. The doors slid shut behind them with a loud clang, and they were propelled into the void. The pod rocketed away from the burning station, the flames and debris slowly fading into the distance. Cale's chest heaved as he looked out through the small viewing window, watching the facility crumble. Juno was silent, her face blank. There was no joy in the escape, no relief. The protocol was still there, inside them. But for the first time, Cale felt a sense of clarity. They had survived. For now. "We're not done," Cale said, his voice steady. "The protocol didn't win. Not yet." Juno didn't look at him. She stared out into the endless void, her mind lost in the distance. "It's already over, Cale," she said softly. "We're already part of it. There's no going back." Cale didn't argue. He didn't have to. He knew the truth. The protocol was in them, but it didn't define them. Not completely. They were still human. For now. And that was enough.